Hey guys, what's up? It's Double Zug. So I'm going to do a little bit of a Bethtilac Firelands boss guide. This is going to be from a healer perspective, disc POV specifically. I'm going to talk about healing, but I'm also going to talk about just all the mechanics generally. So if you come away from this video, you should have a good idea of how to play as a DPS or a tank as well. This is like, one of the, it's non-linear, right? But this is one of the first bosses, and it plays like one. It's not too difficult, but it is a little bit of complexity, and it's going to probably take you a couple of pulls to learn it. I think we killed it on like our third pull or something. And most of it was just working out some of the logistics with the bottom and top. This fight has two sections, really. The first section is adds on the bottom, boss on the top, and you're going to split your raid. And then the second section is the last part of the boss, which is basically just a race against a bunch of AoE that stacks up. So mostly we're going to be talking about that first section because it's way more complicated. I'm going to quickly go over like your raid comp. So ideal for this, you're probably going to prog this as a five heal comp. You could probably 3 or 4 heal it if you're like really good in blasting and everybody's full bis and playing well, but safety, we're 5 healing it here. We have a disc priest, we have 2 H pals, we have a resto shaman, we have a holy priest. I would just recommend if you're 5 healing, have at least one of those healers be a hot healer, at least one be an H pal and one be a disc, and then you can just kind of fill with whatever. It's not super important, the healer comp here. For tanks, just have a blood DK because they're the best, and then whatever you want. We have a bear here. And for DPS, you just want decent mix of ranged and melee. Obviously, DKs are insane, mages are insane. But for this fight specifically, hunters are really nice because we're going to be using their frost traps. So pre-pull, your healers are going to want to pre-shield, pre-hot, etc. because there's a huge burst of damage right away. And you can kind of, if you pre-hot and pre-shield, you can just heal that up for free with your mana. You can see here I'm standing back pre-shielding, and I can basically absorb all the damage from this first raid pulse. And then the first thing we're going to talk about is these adds here. These are called cinderweb spinners. You can see they kind of like rappel down from the ceiling on these little webs. These are how you get up to where the boss is. So it's very important that you knock these off their webs ASAP. And on Heroic, it's even more important because on Heroic, they will cast like a stun if you don't knock them off their webs. There's a couple of ways to do this. You can just do some damage to them. That's the slowest way. The quicker ways are any kind of like displacement effect. I believe like grip, knock, all that kind of stuff works. And also taunts. So you're going to have a whole bunch of melee, obviously 2 tanks. And, any class that has a taunt, like, druids can do it, paladins can do it, warriors, etc. If you taunt them, they will like instantly get knocked off their web. So you can get all the webs like super quickly if you do play this correctly. You can see here at the beginning of the fight, we're all just kind of stacked up in the middle for healing. You can see we knock these all up their webs, and then the most important thing to have happen with these webs is just to have the right people take them first. So you always want your tank to take it first, and you always want a healer to take the second. And then after that, if you're going to send up a second healer, they should be getting one pretty quick, but it's not super important that your second healer gets the third. You can kind of just do free-for-all with whoever's going to grab one. Just make sure that your second healer gets up eventually. You obviously should have like the right number of people assigned to this anyways, so that you're not stranding your healer down below. You can see I'm going up. We have our bear druid going up. Personally, I think it's probably best, especially if you're like trying to push dropping healers here, to send the DK up and have the off tank down if they're non-DK. Because you can probably solo heal up pretty easily with a blood DK and the right composition of DPS and the right healer. That way you can just have more DPS, or you can push more damage onto the boss. You want to have the boss exiting like the first section of the fight at the lowest HP possible. So you can see up here, we have 2 healers, immune and H-Pal, and we have our DPS up here. If you're sending a priest up, it's important to have all these players in one group, or in like grouped up rather, so you can use prayer of healing more effectively. You can see the top phase here is pretty simple. It's basically just some pulsing AoE and some tank damage. You can see here, this right underneath me, this little puddle here is like a meteor. You can see they're coming down. What these do is they just do some AoE when they land, and they also poke a hole in the web. And if you're in the hole, you'll obviously fall down and die. So just don't stand in these. The way we have this positioned, which I think is the best way, is you just have the boss like kind of being dragged circularly around the middle hole, and you just have the DPS kind of stacked on the ass. So obviously melee aren't getting parried, and also because if you're stacked, healing is a lot easier. Obviously, kind of just have a loose stack here, then you just all move together for the meteors. And since most of the DPS up here are probably going to be melee anyways, you don't really lose that much uptime from the movement. And again, you can probably solo heal this with the blood DK, and if everybody stacks correctly for healing, H-Pal could probably do it, Disc. Pretty much all the healers could probably solo heal up here if they're decent players. You can see these holes, that little like fire there, that's the hole left behind by the meteor. Those holes remain for the rest of the fight. So you have a little bit of space denial here, but you're never going to ever like fill the whole area with meteors just because the fight doesn't last that long, so don't worry too much about that. You can see here, once the boss casts this cast here called Smoldering Devastation, you're going to, this will just one-shot everybody on top. So you want to, like, you can kind of milk it for a little bit of extra damage, and then you want to jump down through the middle hole, and you can see here these webs will give you slow fall. So you always want to take her correct hole. If you go through her wrong hole, she will kill you from fall damage. So that's an important lesson to learn in life as well. Just always take the right hole. So you can see as we're falling down here, get a little bit of a view of what's going down on the bottom. This part is like the more complex section of the fight, but once you just do like 1 or 2 pulls, you'll see it's like pretty simple, especially with our gear and damage now. We just kill these ads super quickly. So there's a couple things happening here. We have ads spawning from these corners, and you see we have a frost trap on each spawn. You don't need a frost trap. You'll probably kill the ads so quick that you don't even really need slows. You can see we also have our Balanced Druid Typhooning. Balanced Druids are very good on this part because they're like mushrooms, Typhoon, you have to do really good AoE. Hunter's obviously good. So these little guys, you just have to kill them quickly. If they get to the big guys, they eat and heal them and they do more damage. The big guys just have to be tanked in the middle, faced away from the raid. The big guys do a conal, like cleave thing, so you just have to get them faced away. And then if they will occasionally fixate somebody, if you get fixated, you just obviously have to turn them away from the raid. And their melee damage is reduced when they fixate, so don't worry about getting global. You can just stand there and tank. In Heroic, you also get these different little ads. Let's see if one's going to spawn here. Yeah, you can see that one there, Engorged Broodling. These on Heroic, they move quickly, and they also, when they hit somebody, they just explode in a slight AoE. You can see here, we have our DKs out soaking, but the damage is not honestly that significant. You could probably just have everybody stack in the middle and just tank the Broodlings in like a loose spread and just heal through it if you have 5 healers. But just to be safe, we're doing like the actual strat, which is having somebody soak them. If you don't have like enough DKs or you don't want to have your DKs out there just sitting around, you can just have like people heads up. If you have enough HP, just run out and soak one when you see it. There's a billion different ways of doing this part of the fight, but I think this is just like a super safe, simple way that most raids can do. So you can see here, we'll get more spinners, and you just repeat. And you're going to repeat this 3 times, and the aim of the fight is to have the boss as low HP as possible at the end of those 3 cycles. The really only other thing to say about the bottom is that if you don't kill the drones quickly enough, they will give the boss like extra energy, which will make it so that you go into the second phase, like the burn phase, with the boss at lower HP, right? So you don't really want that to happen. Although it's possible that there's like a cheese strategy where you just let the boss get energy super quickly, push it into the burn phase, and then everyone has full uptime, and you lust and you just heal through the damage. That could potentially actually be the way that people do the fight. It's probably not going to be though. This is like the standard way that you're going to do it. You can also see here in this section, I actually got up pretty late, I think, here, and so we had some trouble healing. Again, if we had these groups set up better, it would be easier to POH here. And we're also not really stacked very well, so the HPAL isn't doing super effective healing with Radiance. So we obviously could do that way cleaner, but with 2 healers, it's really not that dangerous. You can see here, we drop back down. Same basic setup here, just this drone is a little bit far out. I think it's fixated right now because it's like big and red. So yeah, just keep these placed away from the raid. And obviously get these spinners knocked off ASAP. And soak those broodlings. You can see there's a decent amount of damage down here, but it's nothing unhealable with 3 healers down. One thing to mention here, I do get pretty late here. If you're a priest and you're going up, you're like obviously a waddler, right? You have no movement speed abilities. Try to have a setup where the people who need to go up first have like a call system where like the tank goes up first. Obviously he says, I'm up. The first healer goes up and says, I'm up. And then ideally you'd have like your second healer take the third one and go up. That's not super big deal, but just have your DPS make sure they're not like zug-zugging and taking the webs too soon, because you can very easily wipe to somebody going up before the tank, or somebody taking one before a healer has the option to, and then people just rot out up here. You can see people are pretty low up here, and it's just because I was late getting up, which is partially my fault. I probably could have boosted to a web, but it's also, you know, the DPS just getting a little overzealous. You can see I him here just to try to get people a little bit more topped. Also, one thing to mention from a healer POV up here is that sometimes if you're like close to the center or if people are right underneath you in your position on the web, it can look like you're in range to heal them, but they're out of LOS, and it can kind of like troll you a little bit, and you can sometimes target them if they're low on reflex and try to heal them, but they're LOS because obviously they're on the bottom level. So yeah, just this is another reason why you want to have like your up group in the same group, even if you don't have a priest healer up there, just so you can know who's actually in range of you to heal. And so you can see that was the third. And now we are going to go into the burn phase of the fight. You can see here, we just have to clean these up. It's also very important that when the boss comes down, you clean up all the little spiderlings, because if they get to the boss will eat them, and that's really bad. Cleaning these up is like priority 1. Priority 2 is like obviously soaking the broodlings out of the raid, although we're super healthy here. The whole raid could tank like these 2 broodlings and probably live. And then your third priority is killing the drones that are still out there. You can see this one's out there. It's just going to get dragged into the boss, faced away obviously, and just cleave down. Not super important that these die super quick, but you know, obviously you want to cleave them. And then we're just going to be burning the boss. You can see this Fuji's weak core here is tracking this damage, and you can see it's just incrementally going up and up and up. Each stack is 5%, and it affects the tank damage as well as the pulsing AoE. So you can see we have the whole raid stacked on the ass in all of our AoE healing effects. Holy Paladin's obviously insane here. Resto Shaman's insane. Holy Priest to a lesser extent pretty good. You know, your FO is going to be hitting everyone. So you're going to be doing a huge amount of just raw HPS to the raid if you're properly stacked here. So you can heal through a huge amount of damage here. If you're 5 healing like we are, this phase really should not be too problematic for you. But if you're like 3 or 4 healing, maybe a little bit later in the tier, or if we're just really trying to like parse or something, this part of the fight can be really difficult, and you might need to actually cycle your cooldowns optimally. Here you can see I just kind of send barrier. This is like I think this is the first time we made it into this phase. We killed the boss, so we don't have like anybody calling cooldowns or anything. We're just kind of vibing and playing it by ear. But you probably should have like a note just to schedule cooldowns for this, especially if you're pushing healers or having trouble healing through the damage. From the tank's POV, there's just a little tank swap mechanic. You can see on my raid frames that little debuff there is a stacking healing reduction. It's like not dispellable or anything. You just have to swap the tanks over when this gets high, and then swap back obviously when the other tank gets the I think it's called Widow's Kiss. You can see it there. So just a super simple tank swap stacking damage. You can see at the end here, the damage is really stacking up. We have 22 stacks, so it's 110% extra damage. And we pop our link, and every healer here is doing like 30k raw HPS into the raid, and there's 5 of us. You know, people are still at like 70% HP within the blink. But there's a pretty significant amount of damage here, but obviously if you drop healers, you're going to have more DPS, and you're going to push the boss quicker. And also, if we were a lot cleaner in our first section of the fight, we could have gotten more damage on the boss. And obviously gear is going to massively affect this. So I think on Prog, this is, you know, a 5 heal for safety, but very quickly you're going to be able to drop to 4. And I think if you do the top section of the fight correctly, you can probably quickly get this down to 3 healers even. So that's Bethtilac. Pretty fun fight. A lot of stuff going on. Pretty low pull count to kill this one, I think, on Prog. It's not like super highly tuned or anything, especially post nerf the way it is now. So it's gonna be a couple pulls, but it's one that you're really gonna the ways you're gonna wipe on this fight is by having the wrong people go up at the wrong time, and probably just not having your ad section on the bottom like correctly organized, and having people like kind of running around and spiralings getting to drones and stuff like that. But I think with T11 gear the way we have it now, this one's not gonna be too hard for you. I'm gonna probably be coming out with guides for all the bosses, again from a healer POV, but I'm going to discuss all the mechanics so that if you're a DPS or a tank, you'll know what's going on. So that's the guy. Thanks for watching.
Swobu. Zug Zug.